We're in a school where North Korea's dictators are seen as great leaders.
It's so surreal, it's almost as if we're in North Korea.
We're filming with supporters of one of the world's most secretive and authoritarian states. But we're not in North Korea, we're in Japan, and this community is under threat.
顔を殴られたりで、その痛みはずっと覚えてますね。
We meet the volatile far-right activists
こういう悪党を成敗する。
targeting their schools,
ちょっと待って。
as well as disillusioned deserters.
ほとんどの人が生きて帰ってこれなかったんです。
Can Japan's North Korean bubble continue to survive? This is Kyoto, Japan's cultural capital. In a quiet part of town, I'm meeting Yoongi, young, stylish and well-educated, but also a member of a controversial group, the Chongryon, a powerful association of Koreans in Japan with close links to North Korea. This is their local office.
基本的に会議をする場所ですね。
Yoongi's grandparents came to Japan when Korea was a colony, and his family have always had links to the Chongryon. The group runs a network of schools and businesses. Over the years, millions of dollars have been sent back and forth between Pyongyang. Yoongi is head of their local student wing.
This is the Chongryon's own newspaper.
そうです。
Good newspaper?
そう
No
です。
fake news?
ないですないです。やっぱりこの朝鮮の姿が今まさにもういい方に。
North Korea is an international pariah, and Japan is deeply suspicious of those with links to it. But Yoongi has made multiple trips there.
あとはこれは向こうで朝鮮平壌の風景ですね。なんだその朝鮮がやっぱスローガンにしているものが結構書かれたですね。これは一心団結っていうふうに書いてます。そういった意味でこの祖国に帰ってきたっていう印象はすごく強かったです。
Local residents aren't allowed to leave without special permission, and the regime is accused of widespread human rights abuses with tens of thousands in brutal political prison camps. But Yoongi is keen to show me another side to the country.
これ遊園地ですね。これ遊園地で絶叫マシンに乗りすぎて僕が寄ってぶっ倒れた写真ですね。
Unexpected danger in North Korea.
そうですね。あまり絶叫マシンのクオリティが高すぎて。
The trips are part of a North Korean outreach program and are likely carefully choreographed.
How does it work when you visit?
行ったところですね。で、基本的には行けないところもあるんですけど、スケジュールもともと組み込まれているものはあるけれども、僕たちが希望していきたいところは結構ついてきて。
How do you marry that up with the experience that people who've left North Korea, who've run away from there, say they've had?
やっぱりテレビ局で資本主義が望んでいる答えを答えることによってテレビに出て生活をするっていうのも実際にあると思います。
Despite growing up in Japan, many of Yoongi's views align with those of the North Korean state. It might seem bizarre, but he's the product of the two countries' troubled history. The next morning, I'm exploring Kyoto. There are shrines, temples and kimonos, but I'm interested in a whole other world tucked away on a hillside, a world in which Yoongi grew up. Welcome to Kyoto's Korean school. Supported by the Chongryon and North Korea, it was set up by Koreans in Japan after World War II. Even dance class has a North Korean theme. Yoongi is a part-time art teacher here. On the walls are portraits of the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, and his son, who took power after his death. Accused of committing horrendous human rights abuses, here they're seen as anti-imperialist heroes.
미국이 너무나도 큰 힘을 가졌어. 그것에 대항하기 위해서는 작은 나라들은 협력을 해야 한다.
Lessons are in Korean, there are school trips to Pyongyang, and the syllabus has a North Korean influence.
It's so surreal seeing these pictures of North Korean leaders in every classroom. It's almost as if we're in North Korea, not Japan.
Korea was once a Japanese colony, and millions from there came to Japan, but they were never truly accepted, always regarded as outsiders.
子どもたちに自分の国の言葉を学ぶために学ぶ学校がなかった。
40 years ago, Mr. Cho was a pupil here. Now he's the head teacher.
この民族教育朝鮮学校とかそういう歴史を教える、だからアイデンティティを教える学校がなければもう在日コリアンはなくなっていると思います。私は。
The thing I've seen lots of in the school is, of course, portraits of the two Korean leaders, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il. Why are their portraits up in so many classrooms?
異国にいても自分の民族を忘れずに学ぶべきであるというふうに一番苦しい時に手を差し伸べてくれたのが共和国でありキム・イルソン温泉であったので、我々はその恩を忘れない、そういう歴史がある学校なんだということで今も掲げているということです。
Some people would be surprised because they perceive them as dictators.
そのイメージがあるので、そのイメージ的に、北朝鮮の学校イコールとなるのが一番心配。いやもう在日コリアンの学校なんですけども、と共和国を支持した朝鮮総連の方々が作った学校なので。
The children studying here were born in Japan. They're 4th or 5th generation Zainichi Koreans, as they're known. There are still over 60 schools like this here, but they're under pressure. Attendance rates are down, signs of the capitalist outside world are sneaking in. And now the schools are caught in the middle of rising nuclear tensions. North Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea as it calls itself, carried out a record number of missile tests last year, insisting they were a response to American threats. But with many landing close to Japan, the pupils have become targets. Girls only change into traditional Korean clothes when they're inside the building.
미사일 우리나라 공화국이 그 미사일 든지 있었 그러한 것이 있었을 때마다 역시 SNS 든지에서 그러한 우리 학교에 대한 차별적인 발언이 많이 그投稿되고 있는 것이
내가 원래 다니고 있었던 학교에서 초급부하고 중급부 때에 그 창문이 그 털을 되게 막 사람이 던져서 기숙사든지 아니면 교원실의 창문이 깨지거나 하기도 했고 전차 타고 있으면 저 사람 비키라 말해.
This is what they're up against. Angry protests outside schools have been led by Japanese ultranationalists. At this protest in Kyoto, a prominent activist, Yasuhiko Aramaki, was amongst those arrested. He's now running to be mayor of nearby Osaka and has agreed to meet me at his crab restaurant. It's clearly not a place where foreigners normally visit. Our arrival leads to a tense atmosphere, though Aramaki is happy to answer our questions.
You were arrested for threatening behaviour at a Korean school. How could you justify doing that? There are children there at the time.
朝鮮人がよく言うんですよ。朝鮮人の子供にね、対して何の罪があるの？日本人の子供らが遊べない。朝鮮学校が運動場として学校の運動場として使ってるから遊べない。お前ら外人のくせして。
A lot of people would say you're clearly just a racist.
外国人にもかかわらず参政権よこせ。政治ただこの日本に何の責任も負わへん人間がなぜに そんなんよこせって言うねんっていうこういう悪党を成敗する、
The interview is interrupted by one of Aramaki's angry entourage trying to force his way into the restaurant to confront us.
No problem.
No problem. Looks like small problem, maybe. In terms of the Korean community here, some of them are affiliated to the Chongryon.
ちょっと待って。
Hi, wait.
ちょっと上げて。
It looks like it's turned into a proper fight between the guy who was drunk and trying to force his way in, presumably to have a go at us, and the guy we were interviewing, who's, despite being a convicted right-wing activist, let's say, is trying to protect us.
ごめんなさいね。酔っ払いですもん。呼び捨てしやがったな。ほんま。荒巻に言うとけで。
It was a weird moment in an uncomfortable interview, but also something of an insight into Japan's far right. The Korean schools face another threat too. Funding from North Korea is decreasing, and the Japanese government has excluded them from a subsidy scheme, making them more expensive and less popular. Yoongi, the art teacher and Chongryon member, leads a weekly protest against the move and says Japan bears responsibility for bringing Koreans here in the first place.
植民地支配責任として在朝鮮人への民族教育を保障すべきものだと思ってるんです。
I guess some Japanese people would say, why should our money be used to fund a school where there are pictures of North Korean leaders?
肖像画問題も結局は下ろしてで教科書を僕らは僕らで作った教科書を作ってるわけなん使ってるわけなんでその教科書を日本の教科書を使えっていう話にいけるのかっていう話になってくるし日本の言う歴史を教えることになるのでそんなことはもうできない。
The Japanese government told us they would only fund the schools if they can prove the curriculum is similar to those in Japanese high schools or meets international standards. But history and whose version of it is taught is at the heart of the debate around Korean schools. And even within the community, there are radically different views and experiences.
Beginning in the 1950s, the Chongryon helped persuade nearly 100,000 Koreans who were living here in Japan to go to North Korea. They were told that they would find a paradise on earth. Of course, the reality was very different.
Aiko Kawasaki was a student at the Korean school in Kyoto and was persuaded to travel to North Korea in the 1960s. She escaped 40 years later and is now suing the North Korean state. She's giving a press conference about the case. After it ends, she tells me her teachers and Chongryon officials convinced her to leave Japan.
学校の先生が毎日北朝鮮がそういう素晴らしい国だという宣伝をするわけ。地上の楽園だというね。そのために行くって言ったの。
But the dream she was sold turned into a nightmare.
You spent 40 years living in North Korea. What was it like?
自由と名の付くのは一切ないの。ね。だから一番最初はその現実にびっくりして正直言って自殺しようと思った。人がみんなそういう密告網でつながってんの。日本から行った人たち何にも罪を犯してなくても誰かにこう密告されてこういっぱい私のもう近所でもいっぱいいた。強制収容所へ送られた人もいたし殺された人もいたし。
She survived a devastating famine in the 1990s in which hundreds of thousands died and finally managed to escape 20 years ago. But it was so dangerous, she left behind all but one of her children.
捕まったら無条件銃殺されたの。私も脱北して捕まって銃殺された人いっぱい見てるから。
今すぐ楽にしてやるよ。The past is contested territory, and Yoongi is focused on another episode of the community's history. He's directing a play by the Chongryon Student Association about a real-life massacre of Koreans 100 years ago. Thousands were killed by Japanese mobs after false rumors spread that Koreans were poisoning the water supply in the aftermath of a devastating earthquake. But some in Japan deny the massacre ever took place.
でやっぱ日本で関東大震災の真相究明であったり遺骨発掘作業であったりそういったものが全くもうなかったものにされていて関東大震災の朝鮮人虐殺自体がもう空想の出来事のようになっているということで
こういう公演をやるんだよって言ったら朝鮮人大虐殺なんてなかったよ
There is a real sense of grievance within the community, but also of pride in their identity. We're invited to the wedding of two Chongryon members. The families of nearly everyone here came to Japan from the southern part of Korea. They dream of a reunited homeland, but when the country was split in two, felt an ideological link to the north. And even today, the celebrations have a very political tinge. One of the main performers is Myung-hee from a Chongryon cultural group. I caught up with her and Yoongi at a Korean restaurant in the city.
That's a big smile.
Myung-hee told me she had made repeated state-funded trips to the North Korean capital, Pyongyang. For her, it was like coming home.
やっぱりずっと日本ではどこか外国人っていう扱いをやっぱり受けるんですよ。すごい向こう北側に入った平壌に着いた時はすごくなんか安心しました。
It's seen internationally by so many people as being a place where really terrible things happen, where really terrible human rights abuses take place.
ここに人権って言うけれども、じゃあ人権って言うなら制裁かけてるのはどうなんだっていうのはすごく思います。でかつ日本がどんどん人権がないって言うけれども、結局その朝鮮云々って言っておきながら朝鮮学校の問題でもその朝鮮を支持しているからっていうので子どもたちに対して結局はこのミサイル報道が出た時にスパイの
The impression that most people here in Japan, elsewhere in the world would have is that people in North Korea are either forced to support the government there or that they're brainwashed into it.
で実際僕ら行った姿が全く違うし洗脳っていうのはおかしいなっていうのは思います。
そこで出会った人たちは本当に温かくていい人だったので私はぜひ行ってほしいと思います。行きましょう一緒に。
I'm meeting Aiko Kawasaki again, retracing the journey she and nearly 100,000 others made to North Korea in the 1960s. We've come to the Japanese port of Niigata.
ここから乗って出港したわけです。で、あそこのところに行ったわけですよね。だからここへ来るとやっぱり涙が出ますね。
Every time Miss Kawasaki comes here, she leaves flowers for those still in North Korea and for those who died without managing to escape.
そして私は生きて帰ってきました。でもほとんどの人が生きて帰ってこれなかったんです。その人たちのことを思うと私は本当にもう表現のしようがないほど悲しいです。
At the time, Japan wanted Koreans to leave the country, and North Korea was happy to receive them. But it was the Chongryon that facilitated the trips. Their headquarters are North Korea's de facto embassy in Japan, and they've agreed to meet us. The only person we're told is available to speak is the Chongryon's historian.
Some of those people who managed to escape North Korea and come back here They specifically blame the Chongryon for having convinced them to go there in the first place.
우선 일본의 차별이 심했다는 것입니다. 朝鮮人の失業率は日本人の8倍になってるんです。もちもですよ. 누가 못지 못하겠나. 일본에 끌고 온 것이 일본 제국주의고 그러면 일본보다 조선이 낫지. 그렇게 해서 갔지. 네? 자, 자꾸 이 사람들이 이만 재판 읽고 있는 사람이 남아살했다든가 네? 거짓말 들었다든가 가짜 선정했다든가 그것이 기본이 아니란 말이에요.
The leadership of North Korea is accused of committing human rights abuses that are so severe, according to the UN, that they're unparalleled in the modern world. Why would you want to be associated now with a regime like that?
공학이 말하고 있는 미국의 흑인 차별이라든가 인종 차별이라든가 혹은 그 인신매매라든가 매춘 제도라든가 그런 것은 인권 침해가 아닌가.
So much of what Koreans in Japan have been through mirrors the experience of other migrant communities elsewhere. But what I'm still struggling to understand is why some are sympathetic to North Korea, given how repressive the regime is. I'm meeting Yoongi one last time. He wants to tell me about something that happened to him when he was still in school.
近くの中学生の年上の人が長中出身やろということで、朝鮮学校出身だっていうことが言葉でバレてしまって、その時に、僕らがボコボコにされてしまって、当時本当覚えてるのが膝蹴りであったり顔を重くそ殴られたりで、結構もうそうですね顔も腫れたりして、その痛みはずっと覚えてますね。
Yoongi says his attacker was in fact also a Korean who resented Yoongi's confidence in his identity.
学校内でもこの在日だっていう朝鮮半島にルーツがあるっていうことで、すごくいじめられていたというか、朝鮮の報道が出るたんびに自分自身がこの劣等意識を感じてしまうというか、僕自身も当時よりもどんどん学びながら活動していくうちに、その時の古傷というか、それがどんどん表に出てきて、今でもまさにその矛先を、まさに日本に向けるわけなんですけど。
The wounds in this community from the injustices past and present inflicted by Japan run deep. For many, they drive not just the pride in their identity, but also their loyalty to North Korea. The place their families came from, a united Korea, no longer exists. And no matter how troubled North Korea is, perhaps what's most important for them is having somewhere to call home.